The last person on our panel is Nick Bryant-Smith, who, again, whose work I came to know through hearing it through Horror Show, which is a hip-hop band of which Nick is one half of, or a duo. I don't think you can say a band with two people, can you, Nick? I don't think so.
It works.
Okay. And Nick's most recently worked with us in Unlocked in the South Coast Correctional Centre in Nowra, and you saw him at the beginning on Rob's video as well. So for time, I won't give more of an introduction to Nick, but I'll let him tell you his story.
G'day everyone. As Joe mentioned, I got involved in the Unlock program last year, about halfway through the year. I went down to South Coast Correctional with myself, Joe and Lionel, who was mentioned before but who's not here today. And we ran workshops with a group of about 15 to 20, or it fluctuated, but maximum about 30 maximum security inmates. And it was an amazing experience. It was my first time in a prison, and it was a pretty intimidating environment. We wore duress alarms and there were razor wire, and yeah, it was the real deal. So it was quite a confronting experience for me, but it was also incredibly rewarding. As Joe's mentioned, I don't have too much time, so I'm going to start by reading a short poem that I wrote about my experience at the jail, and it's called Undetected. When I arrived, they checked me thoroughly for contraband, making sure I was following the rules. I wondered if what I had with me might show up and set off some alarm, but X-rays and metal detectors could not expose the apprehension I had strapped to my insides, nor the enthusiasm brought from home that I wasn't sure would be welcome. Later, when I returned through those 9 heavy doors, they scanned me again, cleared me for passage, and let us through. Once again, those machines failed to detect what I took with me to the outside world. Fingerprints and retinal scans, surreal like science fiction, but they couldn't see the thoughts darting frantically behind my gaze. My newfound understanding of the path some people take, or my gratitude for the friendships formed with those unlikely gentlemen. Sitting here now, I think of them, wondering what they'll bring with them on the day they leave, and what they'll leave behind. Thank you. So, the whole experience has been really interesting for me, primarily because, as Joe mentioned, I'm not a poet. I don't consider myself to be a poet, so, it's kind of funny to be sitting on a poetry panel in the Writers' Festival, but there you have it. But, I do consider that there's a really strong relationship between poetry and music and lyrics, and particularly hip-hop. So, whilst I don't think of myself as a poet, I do love poetry, and I really enjoyed the process of going into the prison and seeing this sort of transformative effect of getting people to write poetry. I think a lot of people, their initial reaction when you put them on the spot and say, we're going to come in and write poetry with you, they say, well, I can't do that. I'm not a poet. I wouldn't know the first thing about how to do that. And I think one thing that's really powerful about this program is that you're essentially putting people in a situation where you're challenging their own preconception that they can't do something. You're putting them in a situation where their initial reaction is to say, I can't do this. And then with a little bit of guidance and a bit of help, they discover that they're perfectly capable and in fact very talented and write some amazing stuff. And that simple process, I think, of putting someone through that experience and letting them discover something about themselves, something that they can do that they didn't know they could, is really valuable, I think, to anyone, but particularly to people who are in a situation where they're very limited and they're getting a lot of negative reinforcement simply from the situation they're in. So to me, what was so cool about the program is that it was basically a way that we could cultivate some kind of new identity for the guys in the program, a new way for them to think about themselves or to look at themselves. And I think there's a really strong correlation there with hip-hop as being something of a framework where you're your own creative expression and your own ability and how hard you work on your creative expression becomes a means and a reason for those around you to look at you differently and to respect you and to admire you. And also, I think that works on a self-reflective level. So, you know, I was there for 3.5 days. We did 3 days of writing and workshops and half a day of recording. And, you know, basically when we started, the inmates were very cliquey. You know, they stuck to their friends and the people that they were comfortable with and the people that they hung out in the yard with, and there wasn't too much interaction or understanding between the different groups of people within the room. And the extra challenge that we were working with was that a lot of the inmates who were present didn't speak English as a first language. You know, there was a lot of Chinese and Korean dudes there whose English was actually quite limited and who were very intimidated at the beginning at the thought of having to try and write a poem in English. And over the 3 days that we were there and through the exercises that we ran and the poems and the stories that came out of that, I think we created a situation where everybody in the room learnt something about the other people that were present, and they learnt positive things about each other. And they, through the sharing of stories that came through the writing, they discovered they had so many things in common and beyond the negative thing that they all share, which is that they're all locked up together. You know, so they were learning about where each other was from or what their family background was, whether they have brothers and sisters, lovers, things like that. And we basically, I think we gave them a new way to look at each other in the room and to look at themselves. And I think that was really, really powerful and valuable thing. We also definitely improved their confidence, as I mentioned before. And I think we opened up new skills for them, or, you know, new sort of ways of thinking about their own literacy, about the kinds of things that they might like to read. I think, you know, we really broke down preconceptions of poetry in that few days, and we had guys reading things that I think initially they would have been very hesitant to engage with, but over the number of days, and particularly by illustrating the connection between rap, which a lot of the guys, you know, even if they don't think of themselves as being poetry fans, a lot of them are into hip hop, and a lot of them have mates who rap, and a lot of them actually rap themselves. I've been into 2 centres now, and within 60 seconds I had someone coming up to me to spit me a rap. So, you know, I think hip hop is a great bridge there, as far as, you know, showing those connections between different types of writing and allowing the guys to engage with poetry and maybe discover that, oh, I do like this after all. So we're very short on time. To wrap up, I'm just going to read a poem that was written as part of the workshops that I was involved in, and then I think hopefully we're going to throw it open to the floor. If you guys, I know we are running out of time, but if anyone has any questions, things they're curious about the program, or for anyone on the panel, I know it's a rare opportunity to get to talk to the public about the program, so anything you have to ask, we'd be happy to let you know. Okay, so this poem's by Peter C, and it's called Speechless, and I think it was originally written in Mandarin and then translated by another inmate and published in the anthology that came out of our workshops. Okay, Speechless. You lead me into play. Let me go into dream and maze. Do not ask me about it. Just ask me the end. It is sour and sweet. It is united into one. I could not describe how I feel. It has already split my heart. Where is the love? Where? My sweet love, where is my heart? Could not separate the love and unlove. You say your heart is not warm. You do not know where it goes. I know your decision. It breaks my heart. So, you know, we heard that poem and discovered afterwards that what Peter was actually writing about was he just had a phone call with his partner on the outside and had told her to get on with her life, basically. And it was a very confronting moment. And that's just one tiny example. I think there's how many anthologies now? There's 6 or 7 books of these little snapshots of what I think are really important stories that have come out from these workshops. So thanks for listening to us all ramble on today.